Welcome to This World. Vladimir Amelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you.
The top stories today. War of drones escalate in Russia-Ukraine conflict. Teachers' Union calls off strikes after accepting the UK government's offer of 6.5% pay rise. And heavy rainfall batters Beijing, at least 11 killed. At these times, only on WION, World is One.
Hello and welcome to WION World is One. You're with me, Katie Pilbeam, broadcasting live from London this hour. Let's get straight to the headlines. At least 6 people were killed, including 1 child, following Russian missile strikes on the central Ukrainian city of Kryvyi, the hometown of President Volodymyr Zelensky. Myanmar's junta reduces civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi's sentence by 6 years in a partial pardon. Suu Kyi has been pardoned in 5 criminal cases, although she still faces 14 others. Internet memes referring to films Barbie and Oppenheimer spark anger online in Japan, the only country to ever have been attacked in wartime with nuclear weapons. France to begin the process of evacuating its citizens from Niger on Tuesday. France has been accusing the African nation's junta of backing violent protests outside French embassy and the institutions. Chinese military dispatches helicopters to deliver supplies and join rescue operations in the flood-hit Beijing, as incessant heavy downpours wreak havoc in the capital, killing 11. Stuart Broad takes the final 2 wickets to script a fairy tale farewell as England beat Australia by 49 runs in the 5th test to level the Ashes series 2-2.
Stuart Broad with the last couple. It's been another epic test match with an even better ending. He's played in the best of spirits.
We begin with the Ukraine conflict because Russia has deployed tanks, fighter jets, military vehicles and attack helicopters in Ukraine. Kyiv fights back with anti-tank weapons, grenade launchers and anti-aircraft missiles. But there is another side to the conflict, a hyper-modern battleground where drones play a crucial role in surveillance, reconnaissance and combat missions. Well, let's take a look at drone warfare and the unmanned aerial vehicles used by the Ukrainian armed forces. Drones, remote or pre-programmed, have been used extensively in battles. Drones gather intelligence, deliver explosives, and can even launch missiles and fly away. Suicide drones, they are precise and small in size. They effectively penetrate air defences. Now, suicide drones can flood combat theatres and often they're dubbed as the poor man's cruise missile. Another crucial advantage is that suicide drones are only a tiny fraction of the cost of a full-size missile. Drones allow crisis-hit Ukrainian Air Force to avoid putting aircraft and pilots at risk. With depleted strength and dated aircraft, the Ukrainian Air Force is struggling. The Ukrainian they fly Soviet-era jets like the Sukhois, for example, or the MiGs. The country's current fleet of warplanes is older than modern Ukraine itself. The drones are also helping Ukraine save long-range precision missiles. Well, now let's understand why drones, they pose a different challenge, though, than missiles. So missiles, each costing hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, fly fast, they're hard to shoot down, and carry a huge explosive payload. But for now, the bigger threat may come from drones. So they're small, slow, cheap, and easy to shoot down, but they're so plentiful that they come in swarms. Now, most drones in use today, they're smaller than traditional military aircraft and require different kinds of air defences. They fly slower and lower to the ground, and that means that many air defence systems are not optimised to shoot them down. Well, the advanced air defences used to protect high-value targets from missiles are not ideally suited to stopping cheap drones. Now, an entire swarm of drones can cost less than a surface-to-air missile used to take just one of them. Now, the big question here is, can Ukraine bank on drones and force a Russian retreat? Well, experts say that drones alone cannot determine war outcomes on either side. Drones can help tip the balance in favour of a side, but they themselves, they cannot win a war. It takes more than just drones to thwart or reverse battlefield gains. Now, in wars, ground forces will still need to fight the casualty-intensive battles. Well, let's just reiterate what we're talking about here, because we're talking about the use of drones in modern warfare, which are absolutely crucial because they are cheaper and much smaller, and it means both sides can avoid using both pilots and more expensive weaponry and aircraft. So experts say that drones alone, though, cannot determine the outcome of this war, but are being used extensively because they can help tip the balance, as we were saying, in favour of a side, but they cannot win the war, as we're saying here. It takes more than just drones to thwart or reverse battlefield gains, and in wars, ground forces will still be needed to fight the casualty-intense battles, and that's exactly what we're discussing today. Okay, let's get to the politics situation here in the UK, because school strikes in England have been called off. Members of the UK's biggest teaching union have voted to end strikes after accepting the government's offer of a 6.5% rise in their pay. And this ends fears of widespread disruption in the autumn term. Now, members of the four unions, National Education Union and Teachers Union, the National Association of Head Teachers, and the Association of School and College Leaders, they were considering staging coordinated strike action if there was no progress in the pay situation. And since February, union members have held 8 days of industrial action in state schools in England, forcing many schools to close entirely or reduce the number of classes held. But after the government improved its offer, members of all four unions agreed to accept the deal on the table. However, unions have warned that while the 6.5% uplift was a marked improvement on previous offers, it was not enough to correct a decade of real terms pay cuts. The NEU, which is one of the largest education unions in Europe, representing more than 450,000 teachers, lecturers, education support staff and leaders. Now, according to the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, she said that the NEU's decision to accept the pay offer is good news for teachers, parents, and most importantly, it's good news for children. But the Education Secretary further added that the deal brings an end to the disruption faced by parents and young people, and now they can focus on giving children a world-class education. Well, Keegan said that teachers can now tackle high levels of absence, the gap between richer and poorer students, and the time lost as well in education during the pandemic. Well, for more on this particular topic that we've been covering now for seemingly months on end, our correspondent here in the capital, Alex Isaac, is joining us, as this is a huge breakthrough.
Absolutely, and it is actually more about that percentage which the independent review suggested that it should offer. It's about the fact that the last offer that was on the table by the government, by the Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary, said that some of the money that would come out of the budgets of the schools. So schools are really concerned that if they agreed to the percentage rise that we saw previously, that they would have to really consider about what would be important. Would it be the materials in the schools? How would it come across? Where would the education for the students lie? This is a real bonus, obviously, that they're getting this pay rise, that these strikes will be over, but it isn't really going to end here. Across all of the public sectors, most of them have accepted that 6% pay rise that we saw a couple of weeks back. But many people are still incredibly unhappy that they still don't have enough that in line with inflation for the past decade, really. Wages aren't really realistically going up to the same rate as the cost of living is. Bills are still highly expensive, the cost of food, the cost of fuel, nothing else seems to be coming down. So this is a small victory, but when it comes to across the board about people who aren't necessarily in the public sector, but they're also feeling a real push on their wallet to know whether or not, they're not getting a pay rise across all of the sectors. And schools specifically, some of them are closing down. Here in the capital, we are hearing a number of schools are closing down because there aren't enough students going to those schools. The infrastructure is another issue that needs to be concentrated on. It does feel that this is one small step, but sadly there are many steps to go to ensuring that there are enough public sectors that are getting the right pay, and so they're able to do the basic job that they have applied for.
And Alex, you've been covering strikes in the country for months on end now, and there's various sectors that are on strike, and namely the NHS is a big issue here in the country because we've had consultants, junior doctors, we've had nurses as well. It's just a strike situation, and we called it the winter of discontent, and that's gone right through to the summer. Do you think that this deal that the teachers have managed to strike will embolden other areas of the country and the economy to step forward and strike?
There's a real interest with the unions to be pushing forward the strikes. I think with the NHS workers, a lot of those public sectors workers, you did accept that 6%. So it's the unions like the BMA, the British Medical Association, with senior doctors, junior doctors and consultants. That's a real problem for the NHS because when they're going on strike and they want way above that 6% barrier, they want nearly double figures on a pay rise. And of course we have the rails as well, which that seems to be ongoing. Not long ago there was meant to be a tube strike, but that also got put to bed. But it doesn't mean that that's not going to happen in the future. A lot of the rail unions are very adamant that they're going to keep going until they get what they want, and that isn't just about pay. It's not always coming down to money. It's about how they're working. They don't want to do zero contract hours. They don't want to work above and beyond their times. They don't want to have automated driving vehicles. All of these things are coming under the unions. So it isn't just about pay. It's a whole bigger deal than that, and that's why people will continue to strike.
Right, Alex, thank you so very much indeed for covering that for us. So as we know, as it stands on the strike front, we've got teachers accepting that pay rise. We also had, as you pointed out there, we had most eligible dentist doctors receiving that 6% pay rise, and for junior doctors it will be increased by an average of 8.8%. Alex Isaac, thank you so very much indeed, covering everything political and economic here in the UK for us. Well, Britain has imposed sanctions on Russian judges and prosecutors involved in the trial of Russian opposition politician Vladimir Kara-Murza. Kara-Murza is a dual national who holds both a Russian and a British citizenship. He lost an appeal against his 25-year jail sentence on Monday. Kara-Murza was imprisoned in April for treason, among other charges. Britain has called it a politically motivated conviction. Karim Mirza is accused of spreading false information about the armed forces and was declared a foreign agent. Well, taking to Twitter, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak wrote that Karim Mirza's conviction is desperate and unfounded, rejecting his appeal, saying that it's unjustified and that he should be released immediately. Britain said it had imposed asset freezes and travel bans on 2 Moscow City court judges. Other targets in the sanctions include 2 prosecutors and an expert witness as well. Britain says this expert witness provided false justification for Karim Mirza's detention. Niger remains on the edge of days after a military coup shock the African nation. Well, the ousted president Mohamed Bazoum met with the Chadian president. Also, this while many international blocs are angered by the former French colony right now. So let's break this down, all the details that's been happening over the last few days. So this was also the first public appearance by the president since being driven out of office. Now, the ousted leader could be seen smiling in the photos posted on Twitter. The Chadian president is in Niger to mediate between the coup leaders and the government. Now, the coup leaders have also managed to gather support from the Burkina Faso and Mali. The 2 nations, also under military leadership, have issued a warning stating that international military intervention in Niger will be seen and reacted to as a declaration of war. Meanwhile, France has denied all accusations of military intervention in the former colony. The concern of the intervention was raised by the military leaders of the coup. Now, the French Foreign Ministry also dismissed accusations of its security forces using lethal means to respond to the military junta attack on the French embassy in Niamey on Sunday. France's Foreign Ministry said the embassy was violently attacked by the prepared groups, which Niger's security forces did not fully bring under control. Now, it's said that contrary to what certain military officials say, no lethal means were used by the French security forces. Right, well, Niger's new junta has accused France of seeking a military intervention to reinstate deposed President Mohamed Bazoum. Now, Bazoum, a Western ally, whose election just over 2 years ago now was a watershed in Niger's history. It was toppled on July 26 by the elite presidential guard. Now, the guard's chief general, Abdurrahman Chiani, declared himself leader, but his claim has been shunned internationally and by the West African regional bloc, ECOWAS.
Dans sa ligne de conduite allant dans le sens de la recherche des voies et moyens pour intervenir militairement au Niger, la France, avec la complicité de certains Nigériens, a tenu une réunion à l'état-major de la garde nationale du Niger pour obtenir des autorisations politiques et militaires nécessaires.
Niger's military junta forces arrested the ousted government's mines minister, the head of the ruling party and oil minister, Mahaman Sani Mahamadou. It has detained the interior minister, transport minister, and the deputy. Amid global economic gloom, there's some good news from the Eurozone. The 20-member monetary union has begun to grow again as inflation continues to cool down. Well, the latest data shows that the Eurozone's gross domestic product rose by 0.3% between April and June, compared with the January to March quarter when the economy had stagnated. Moreover, the GDP has fallen by 0.1% in the last 3 months of 2022. Now, in more good news, the Eurozone's inflation continued to fall in July. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, for the Eurozone fell to 5.3%, down from 5.5% in June. Now, the CPI is important as it takes food and energy prices into account. Consumer inflation has fallen from 10.6% in October 2022, but it's still well above the European Central Bank's target of 2%. But core inflation without food and energy costs was unchanged at 5.5% in July. However, despite some positive news of growth in July, there are fears of economic stagnation for the rest of the year. Now, the ball is in the court of the European Central Bank. A rate hike may bring down inflation, but will impact economic recovery. Nevertheless, the ECB President Christine Lagarde has hinted at a rate hike pause in September. Okay, let's get some sport now. In a fitting end to an illustrious career, Stuart Broad took the final 2 wickets in his final match to help England win the 5th Test by 41 runs and level the Ashes series to 2-2. England's win, it replicates the draw series of 4 years ago and preserves an unbeaten home record in the Ashes series that stretches back to 2001. Australia, who won the first 2 tests, had already retained the urn. Australia resumed the 5th day on 135 but no loss, but both openers, David Warner and Khawaja, did not last long under the grey skies in London. Chris Woakes took advantage of helpful conditions to remove David Warner for 60. And Khawaja was dismissed in Woakes' very next over after a well-made 72. It seems like England were right back in it when Mark Wood sent Marnus Labuschagne to the pavilion. Steve Smith and Travis Head then put together a crucial head to steady the ship for the visitors. Rain arrived just after the lunch break, though, when Australia needed 146 more runs to win. The play resumed 2 hours and Head shipped another 26 runs with Laureate. But their partnership was broken on 95 by Boeing Ali. Then a dramatic collapse saw the world champions lose 4 wickets for just 11 runs as they slipped from 264 to 3 to 275 for 7. Well, Carrier Murphy briefly dug in and added 35 runs to threaten another Australian run chase similar to their 2-wicket win at Edgbaston, which had kick-started the series before Broad intervened and ensued a fairy tale ending to his career. England's all-time leading Ashes wicket-taker claimed his 603rd and 604th Test wickets in the form of Murphy and carried to dismiss Australia for 334 and deny them their first Ashes win in England since 2001.
Surely that's out. Yes. Has he got him? Edged and through to that guy there. He does not drop them. Zach Crawley, Chris Woakes. Bairstow with the outstretched right hand. They like. Oh yeah, they're just falling like dominoes here at the. Catch! Edge.
One of the UK's best known and most loved actors, Judi Dench, is losing her eyesight. In her recent interview, the 88-year-old actor said that her eyesight has now deteriorated to the extent that she's no longer able to see on film sets. Well, Dench further explained that a degenerative eye condition has left her unable to read scripts as well. Well, despite these difficulties, Dench said that she would try to work as much